Okay. A lot of you guys obviously sent me a message at the same time, so I'm gonna try to just send this to everybody. I might make a few different clips and then just put them together. That way, all my thoughts are in the same place. So maybe 8 years ago, I was working as a cashier, and I never had anxiety before, and I started getting dizzy. I actually had a UTI, so I had to pee, every 5 minutes. And that would annoy my boss. So if you can imagine just, having to stand in one place and having to constantly call your boss over to cover for you so you can go to the bathroom. And this just, happens a lot. Just the long lines and the bright lights, I started to get dizzy. I thought, something must be wrong. Obviously, later on, I come to realize that it was, the stress that was causing these physical sensations. But, it got so bad till I ended up quitting my job. I started having panic attacks everywhere I went, the store or in a car. So I avoided the store and I avoided the car, and I ended up, bedridden for a little bit. There was a time where I would only leave my bed to go to the bathroom, because if I tried to stand up, I would get dizzy. And luckily, not so good for her, but luckily for me, I had just met my wife, and she took care of me. She brought me food, she made sure I was okay, but I was stuck in my bed. And just for the first 3 years, I convinced myself that, I must have some sort of disease or cancer, or, and if I go to the doctor, they're going to tell me I have, like 5 days to live. And I didn't want to hear that. So I'd rather just like die peacefully and not know that I'm about to die, right? So I avoided the doctor. And for the first 3 years, everybody around me was telling me it was anxiety, but I had never experienced anxiety, and I didn't realize that my brain or my thoughts could cause physical sensations or symptoms, like it being hard to breathe, or your chest pains, or your heart going a million miles an hour, or even getting dizzy. So after the 3 years, I started to realize, under certain situations, if my wife's home, or, I would feel safe and I wouldn't feel those symptoms, it being hard to breathe, or, me being dizzy, or feeling like I'm about to have a heart attack. And, I realized that it's my brain, it's my feelings, it is anxiety that's causing these things. Because, if I did have cancer, if I did have this crazy disease, it wouldn't go away the moment I felt safe or calm. And then I finally accepted that, anxiety is definitely what it was. But, after years and years of looking out my window, being jealous of people being able to go outside, or, just having a conversation with the cashier, like I said, it's just, it got really dark. It's weird. A lot of people associate with people with anxiety that they are, not very social, or, socially awkward. I'm actually an extrovert, so I get my energy from people, talking to people or whatever. And I lost a lot of family, I lost a lot of friends, and it ended up going to some pretty dark places. So with that desperate mentality of like, I don't want to live like this anymore, like who does, right? But, after so long, it was sort of like life or death. At least that's what it felt like. So, COVID happened, right, in the middle of all this, and I was never going to leave my house. Luckily, that made it so I could see a therapist online, video chatting or whatever. But I told myself this is an important part. Like, if you're probably going to hear the correct answer or an answer that works for you multiple times in your life or during this process, and you just might not have the right mindset to for it to resonate, and it might be the wrong messenger. And I think I said that in my post. It has to be, the right message from the right messenger, and you have to be in the right mindset. So I went into therapy thinking like, okay, I'm going to listen to this person. This, like, if I listen to everything she says as if my life depended on it, maybe something will work. Maybe I'll get better. Maybe, whatever. So I went into therapy with that mindset that this person is going to save me, right? And so, I did the things she told me to do. And one of the first things I did that helped was self-talk. And, again, a lot of these phrases you're going to hear a lot. And, you might quickly dismiss it, but it is possible that, the first time you attempted these situations or, strategies, that you weren't in the correct mindset to try them, because if you think something's not going to work, then it's not going to work. But self-talk is like, I think if I go outside, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to pass out. I'm going to have a panic attack and die. If I go outside, if I go in the car, if I go to the store, we're predicting things that are negative, and they're also lies. Like, we've obviously experienced the fear, in these situations where it feels like we're going to die, but we never do. And the self-talk is like, okay, I think I'm going to have a heart attack, but I've never had a heart attack. I've never passed out. All these thoughts of like, I'm going to die or I'm going to pass out, they've never actually happened. And I know that I have anxiety, which causes all these physical symptoms. So the self-talk is all about, proving yourself wrong. I feel like I'm going to die, but I never have. And, I know anxiety causes all these symptoms. And you're honestly halfway there at that point, because once you realize that it's not death, because, those are the big thoughts, are like, something horrible is going to happen if I do whatever. Or just in the moment, like when you're having a panic attack, I'm about to die, I'm about to pass out. You have to know, like, you have to be able to prove to yourself through experience, obviously, because you never have died, and just talking to yourself, like logically proving, because anxiety is lying to you, right? You're not going to die. Maybe you've passed out before, but I never did. I just felt like I was going to. You have to fight, the truth. You have to fight the lies with the truth. And the truth is again, you have anxiety, and anxiety is known, and causes all these symptoms. The next thing I would say is like either a distraction or a meditation. And there's a million different things that you can do. I would probably advise going online and like Googling what are 100 ways to, help with anxiety or deal with anxiety. Some of them will be like deep breathing. Some will be, count to 10 or look at 5 things, smell 3 things. There's lots of meditations out there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. And a lot of it is probably not going to do anything for you. Obviously, most likely you've heard most of this stuff before, and you're still in the situation. But again, at the beginning, I talked about being in the correct mindset. You have to understand is like, you should think about this stuff when you're not anxious, because then you can think rationally, logically, whatever. But you have to understand is like, when my heart hurts, like it's going, or it's hard to breathe, or dizziness, whatever. Before I continue, a cool trick that I know about if you get dizzy is if you take your hand and you like pinch as hard as you can the back of your neck and like keep your head straight while you're doing that. That for me took away dizziness. My mom actually had a neck surgery, and I put on her neck brace because I was like, this thing doing this to my neck is actually making it feel like I'm not dizzy. Putting a neck brace on actually made it to where I wasn't feeling dizzy. But, when you're feeling different or weird, anxious or whatever the physical symptom is, let's just go with heart. If your heart's going and you pay attention to your heart in that moment, it gets worse. Like 100%, that is what will happen. And you have to understand is that, like, normal people feel aches and pains all the time, like, throughout their body, but they quickly explain it away. Maybe I had something bad to eat, or I didn't sleep right, or whatever it is. They don't overanalyze it. And people like us, if something feels wrong, we hyper focus on it, and again, your thoughts will make it worse. So for the distraction, it's like my heart's going or whatever, or it's feeling crazy. If I pay attention to it, then I'm probably going to have a panic attack. We start to notice things like, oh, am I getting a good breath, or just any of the physical symptoms. If you pay attention to them, then they get worse. The thing is like, initially you may get triggered, right? Or start to feel anxious. In that moment, you quickly need to try to find a distraction. Like, some people will say sit with the fear, and there is a reason to do that. The number one reason is what I've already talked about, being able to prove that you're gonna be okay. If you've obviously experienced the fear before, and you didn't die, so that's the strategy with sitting with the fear. Is like, as scared as I'm gonna get, or as hard as these symptoms are, it's not going to kill me. I will get through this. That's the sitting with the fear. But the distraction is like, you can sort of stop anxiety in its tracks, and that gives you a lot of confidence. Like, some people might think that, I don't know, everybody's different, but the like meditation is bullshit or whatever. But if you can find anything to distract yourself in the moment when you're having anxiety, that's why I said you should Google like 100 things that might help, because everybody's different. But if you can successfully stop yourself in the midst of a panic attack, or when you're starting to feel anxious, then that's going to build up your confidence as far as like, hey, I actually have the ability to calm down. And when you've had anxiety for years and years, and it's prevented you from leaving your house, it sort of feels like you have a superpower, right? Like once you start building that confidence, like successfully stopping a panic attack, and you start going out into the world, or maybe even just taking a few steps further than what you could before, that builds upon itself to where, like, it's just like, I don't know, for me, I never had anxiety, and then I was agoraphobic. It was just like a steep incline. But you can also have like the exact opposite. Like, you can get out of this as quickly as you got into it, because that confidence and just it clicking for you that you are in control, it sends you into overdrive of like positivity. Like, I remember the first time riding a bike in my neighborhood, and like I was just bawling. Like, on the way back, I just started crying. Like, I'm actually outside, I'm actually doing this. So the negative feelings that you feel with anxiety, as I've said, it gets really dark and depressing. Like, there's so much good and glory and just positive. Like, I would describe my anxiety sometimes. I get like dark chills, but there's like golden butterflies on the other side. When you actually go outside, I'm trying not to cry, because I remember these feelings of like finally beating it and just feeling free. Like, you feel trapped, and you're a prisoner of your mind, and in your house, and just being able to be free, enjoy the beautiful world. And that's the motivation, right? Like, that's another factor in all this is motivation. And I would say that as dark as some of these feelings are, as far as fear, or being isolated and hating yourself and feeling like a burden, I do think that the most powerful feeling in the world is love, and just being kind to people around you. And I'm sure for me, I don't want to say for you, because I don't want to offend anybody, but like, my wife took care of me this whole time, and I always felt like a burden, and I felt bad, and I wanted to take care of her and do things for her. Hold on, I'm gonna fix this. So the motivation of like, I love my wife, I love my family, I want to see my friends. I want to I want to feel like a useful person. I want to, feel like a damn superhero. There's so much love that's like built up inside of us that we desperately want to get out. Like, depending on your situation, maybe you have crappy people in your life, but for a lot of us, there's at least someone or a couple people that we love, and there's more that we could do for them, or go to a soccer game, or just go out to dinner, whatever it is. We have dreams that to normal people are just everyday life, but to us it's like a significant, amazing thing, right? Like going to see a movie in a movie theater. That sounds insane to someone who has agoraphobia, but like, that motivation of being able to be there for the people you love, and that on top of building that confidence, once you're able to find things that can stop anxiety in its tracks, it just hits you all at once. So there's a few things that worked for me. Like, the thing is, again, if you think about your heart in that moment when you're having a panic attack or whatever the symptom is, if you focus on it, it does get worse. But if you can successfully distract yourself, it goes away. So do not do this thing I'm about to say. But there was times where I would try to, exposure therapy. I'm going out. I'm not driving, but I'm in the car, and I was always terrified of cars because, if I have a panic attack, I can't leave. I'm in it, it's moving. There's no escaping. Like, maybe I could pull over, but then I'm not home quicker. I always hated the car. But I would put cigarettes out on myself. Like, I was that desperate to not have a panic attack that, I'm trying to distract myself in the most extreme sort of ways. Obviously, don't hurt yourself. But, that worked. And I don't want to say that because I don't want you to do that. But what I'm saying is, like, people have a cold water bottle or, ice, something that's physical that they can touch or drink. Candles are good too because, for me, a lot of the time it felt like I couldn't get a good breath, like, that I wasn't breathing properly, or I'm not breathing, whatever. Obviously, I was always breathing, but like, just that I'm not getting a good enough breath. And the cool thing about a candle is, obviously, you can smell the good smell, which is a distraction, but that proves to you that you are breathing because you can smell the candle. So candles are always good. Like I said, any distraction that you can find, no matter how silly you think it is, or that other people might think it is. I've known people that have not left their house in 16 years. There's nothing, don't ever feel less or embarrassed, or that, you're above a certain thing. If it works for you, and it's the silliest thing in the world, then do it. Like, eventually you won't have to. I go out all the time now, and I don't do my techniques, but I know that I have them. That's the thing, is like, if you find 5 or 6 techniques that boom, works for me, because like, and also if you have a safe person, that's good too, especially someone who can go with you, and you're in a car, right? So I would suggest, if you're going out, and you have a safe person, what I did initially in the beginning was I would sit in the back seat. That way I have lots of room back there if I wanted to lay down or pretend like I wasn't there. And, the moment I said, hey, I can't do this, take me home, then my wife would immediately take me home or whatever, and I could do my 5 or 6 techniques that would distract me. Because, like, let's say you only have one technique, or no techniques. But, again, let's say you have one technique. Like, it's, smelling your candle or whatever it is, and it doesn't work, and you're, like, not home yet, that you're screwed, right? So that's why you have 5 or 6 techniques that work for sure. That way, in the back of your mind, you're not out of options. You have hope still, like, oh, fuck, the candle didn't work, let me try the water bottle, you know what I mean? Like, you go through these techniques where you give yourself enough time to where you've tried all the techniques, but by the time you're done and there's still hope lingering because you haven't finished through all of them, you're already home and you feel safe. So that's a good one. So in the back seat of the car, I would, initially, knowing that I have all this stuff that I could do, in the back of my head, I would try to sit through the car ride, and most of the time that didn't work. But I would try to sit there and experience it, feel it, just enjoy it. Like, try not to think about it, right? Because if you think about it, again, it gets worse. But if I felt something, then I would squeeze my hands. And if that didn't work, then I would put on my headphones, listen to a meditation or just anything that calms me down. If that didn't work, I would lay down while I'm doing that. If that didn't work, I'm telling Journey's my wife, to take me home. And sometimes I'll pinch myself, whatever it is. But again, the 5 or 6 techniques, and usually, when we were going out initially, my mom lives 5 minutes away. You don't need to go far. Like a lot of people, the store would be like a big deal, right? So like initially you could start with something small, and again, this is a situation where you're in a car with a safe person, but that is how it was for me. But you could start small. Like if you're afraid of going 10 feet away from your house, and maybe you don't even have anybody with you, go 9 feet and just sit there. Like, go to the limit of where you feel safe and get as close as you can to the place where you don't feel safe and just look at it. And eventually you're going to be like, okay, if I walk one more step, I'm not going to die, right? Like, that's the thing. You can go as slow or as fast as you want. But, slow exposure to the thing that you're afraid of, eventually, you can make fun of it, There's a lot of different ways. I would say, like, the number one thing is your mindset. Because, again, there is a reason I told you guys, because I'm sending this to multiple people, about the very beginning. One, to make sure that that, yeah, I know what you guys are talking about. I've been through this as well. But just, I was wrong. Like, the first 3 years of having agoraphobia, I 100% thought it was cancer. It was, tumors. It was death. I thought I was dying. And, I'm pretty confident in myself and in my thoughts, and that, I'm stubborn, right? Like, I thought I was dying, and I was wrong. You have to understand that, like, if you hear things that, like, you've already heard before, like meditation or a distraction or whatever, it is possible that you were not in the correct mindset when you heard it or when you tried it. Because here's the truth. Like, if you think about anxiety, if you think about the heart when the heart's going, then you're going to give yourself a panic attack. If you can successfully distract yourself in that moment, no matter what it is, meditation, water, candle, it doesn't matter, anxiety will go away. I know that the physical symptoms and the feelings and thoughts are very strong and very overwhelming, and it 100% feels like you're gonna die. It's not that those feelings or symptoms that you physically feel are not happening. No, they are. Like, your heart is beating fast, and it is, becoming hard to breathe, and you are dizzy. But the cause of those things, unless there's a medical condition, right? Like, everybody's different. But if for straight up anxiety, I hate this slide. Let me fix it. For straight up anxiety, you are causing this. Like, it is your thoughts. And, I'm not going to ride on a roller coaster. I'm probably not going to get on an airplane. There are a lot of things that I am not going to do. Like, there are plenty of things to actually be afraid of. If you're in a forest and there's a bear chasing you, there are plenty of reasons to be afraid. And, your body is going to have a response to that fear. You've probably heard the term fight or flight. But when there's nothing there, when there's nothing rational to be afraid of, then your body attacks itself. And that's when you get a panic attack. And, whatever it is that triggered you, whether it be heat or, going outside or anything. There's a million different triggers out there. I would try to get out of that situation. If you're hot, and maybe you have no AC or whatever, go stand in front of the fridge, get out of that situation and find a distraction away from it, and figure out how to prove to yourself and build yourself some confidence that that you can stop it in its tracks, because it is caused by you. Like, again, not medical conditions, but your anxiety. All those symptoms are real, but you're causing it. So in the moment when you feel the panic attack coming on, nowadays, because again, I have all the techniques that have worked for me in the back of my head, and that gives me confidence. But now, again, I've mentioned that normal people feel aches and pains. I just ignore it. Like, that's where I'm at right now. Obviously, if something were to happen and maybe I needed to use some techniques, which I haven't had to use in a year, I know I could, and that could be why I can ignore the feelings or whatever. But that is where I'm at right now. Like, normal people who, go places, go to work, whatever they're doing, they're not constantly thinking about anxiety. They might never think about anxiety, and that's the difference. Like, you have to get into the headspace or destination in your brain where you don't think about anxiety at all. Like there is fake it till you make it. Like, that's another phrase. Like, I don't have anxiety. If you think you have anxiety, then you have anxiety. If you don't think you have anxiety and you actually believe that, like, you have to believe that fully, then you don't have anxiety. So I know that if I were to feel weird, that I'm causing it, and if I think about something else, it goes away. And that has worked for me. Now, there's one more element to all this. Like, that, all of what I've said so far initially is like what started to get me to do exposure therapy and build confidence. But there was this idea where, I am predicting the future. When I was at my worst or whatever, I'm imagining that if I go outside, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to die, I'm going to have a panic attack. My biggest fear is death. So I figured to myself, I'm imagining death, right? Like, I'm imagining all these terrible things that are happening. What if I tried to imagine the opposite? I had a therapy session where my therapist told me to visualize my fear, right? Like, make it an object of some sort, like picture it in your mind. And I pictured, death, right? Because I always feel like I'm gonna die, so I pictured the Grim Reaper. Obviously you can see those sights in the background. I really took this to heart, that, like, death is coming for me. And she told me to picture, my fear in my mind, and then she told me to put it in a box, right? Like, and some therapists do this exercise with people where they have your fear, you put it in a box, you store it away in your mind where, it can't get you. And, to a lot of people that seems silly. And it is silly. But I took that in a weird direction where I decided, okay, if I'm imagining, death coming after me, this super villain, then I need to become, a superhero. And since all this is occurring in my brain, right, kind of like a dream, then, I should, because, dreams usually sort of just happen to you and you experience them. But when you're aware, or when you're awake in your dream, it's like magic. Like, you can fly around, you can do anything. So I figured, okay, death is coming for me, but he's in my head, like, I'm creating him. I might as well create myself to be a hero. So in my mind, I imagined myself when I would go out and do these things that I'm fighting death. And there was this weird imaginary battle in my head where I'm the hero, I'm fighting death. And, that on top of the techniques of distraction and exposure and, building that confidence when you realize that you can stop anxiety in its tracks, and the love that you feel in your heart, that that's bursting out of your chest, wanting to get out and be free. All of that in combination is what got me to beat my anxiety. Now, this is completely separate from me sharing this advice with you or whatever. But the idea of that death, imagining death and him coming after me, I felt so strongly about, becoming a hero in my brain, and that actually like gave me so much confidence to get out. I've actually talked to other people that have imagined things similar. Like, they would go out for a drive and they would pretend that they're in like a Star Trek episode, and like the gears are like buttons on this spaceship. So again, I mentioned that whatever you have to do, even if it's silly, if it works for you, it works. And the imagining death coming after me, it worked for me. And I actually made a movie about it. I wrote ideas down for 2 years, and I'm not like a smart person or a professional, but 2 months ago I wrote down, I wrote the script, and me, my wife, and my mom, that's pretty much it. We bought a costume of death, but we made this sort of retelling of how I beat anxiety. And some of the techniques are there, but it's mainly like I'm imagining these horrible things that are happening to me, so I should be able to imagine the opposite and become the hero and face my fear. And if you're interested in watching that, like, cool. But this is really just like, hopefully this advice will do anything for you. But the movie is cool. It is How I Beat Anxiety. I'll send that to you as well if you want it. But thanks for listening. I'm going to try to stitch this together because I know I made a few videos. But if you guys, want to talk about this more, because, everyone has different triggers, and not everything I said is going to work for everybody. It really is situation dependent. Everybody's different. But I'm willing to talk to you guys about, your specific situation or whatever. And thanks for watching this video.